I have been so blessed to be in the presence of India's most revered saints, to listen to them, to receive their blessings, to have personal deep experiences of the divine, to read so much, to listen to so much. And I give you that because in all of these 22 years, I've never heard one agreed upon answer for the what is the point of it all question. As in, if God is perfect and God is omnipotent, all-powerful, and infinite, why wouldn't God just create us already enlightened? Like if God is doing this whole thing, why would God make us do this? And in all these years, it's one question that I've never heard kind of a consensus answer. The answer that I've heard the most and that feels the most right to me goes like this. There is nothing but God. Okay, that's agreed upon. Even if I worship God in the form of a deity, say I have a deity of Krishna, or a deity of Ram, or a deity of Shiva, or a deity of the Divine Mother, and I worship God in that deity. Nonetheless, if I am well educated or well cultured or enlightened or have been in the presence of the saints, I know that actually I am one with God, that there isn't really this separation of God here in the deity and me over here in this space between us. The bottom line truth is nothing but God. Okay? However, being in love is a very beautiful thing. And in the Indian tradition, there's many different lineages, but they tend to fall into one of two categories. One is the category of there is nothing but God, Advaita path. Everything is God. The idea of dualism, the idea of worshiping a God outside of yourself is an illusion. God is in you, God is everywhere. There is no lover and beloved and love, it's just God. So that's one path. The other path is the path of dualism, what we would call a path of bhakti, a path of devotion, a path of loving God. But if you talk to the enlightened people on the dualist path, they know it's all God. They know that the divine being they're worshiping in the form of this deity or a picture is in them. But worshiping God, loving God, feels really beautiful. And it's very difficult to love the self in the same way. And the simple act of being in love with, of singing to, of praising, of loving God is so beautiful that although they know it's all one, nonetheless they would prefer the path of devotion. Now I've given you that background because it brings us into the answer, which is that God, Himself, herself, itself, in order to feel the love of coming together, created us as separate beings, because otherwise you could take your question and go even further back, which is not just why aren't we born enlightened, but why are we born at all? Right? I mean, if we're all just God, so A, why aren't we born enlightened? But B, why are we born at all? And the answer is God. In order to experience that love of coming together, has created us as separate, has given us free will to choose light or dark, such that if not this life, eventually I will choose the light, because you've got to keep coming back till you do it. You know, I mean, the school's going to make you do 5th grade over and over and over and over again until you can get long division down. But eventually, when you get it down, you can go on to 6th grade. So in the same way, we're going to keep coming back until we choose light, until we have that experience of self-realization. So God, of course, is infinitely patient. When we choose the light, when we have what you've called self-realization or enlightenment or God realization, it's the experience of coming back together. And for the love and the joy of that experience, God has created us. Those of you who are married or who are in or have been in passionate love relationships know that one of the things that we do, consciously, unconsciously, is create some conflict with our loved one. When things start to feel kind of boring in a relationship, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, we sort of instigate a fight. Why? Because making up feels so good. And because in that making up, we come back together at a higher place than we were before we instigated that fight. That we had kind of started taking each other for granted, gotten into a rut. And so we know this drama of the fight so that we can make up. So in the same way, God has pushed us out in order to experience the joy of us coming back, of that oneness. So I can't guarantee to you that is the reason. I cannot say to you, I have gotten it from God's mouth and I am sure that's why. But this is it's the reason I've heard the most frequently, and it's the reason that in my own heart feels the most right. I know it's all God, but I love the experience of sitting in the Ganga Arati and listening to Puja Swamiji sing and singing and feeling carried to God. That experience of love for God. That if I kept reminding myself, there is no God outside yourself, it's all God within you, it would be a lot harder to kind of sing to yourself and fall in love with God inside. And so that reason feels right to me based on just my own experience of loving the path of loving God.